Color guide, go away. Left.
Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in proudly reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Order. Colors. Ready, cut. Color guard. Post. Post.
And now our national anthem will be sung by Miss Buzak.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave.
March off the color guard.
Color guard. Left. Face. Forward. March.
Please be seated.
See, everything's well choreographed.
I want to thank you all for visiting our school tonight. And it is my great pleasure to introduce our Superintendent of Schools, Dr. Kevin Smith.
Good evening. I too would like to thank everyone for coming out tonight. We are honored, we are truly honored to host so many distinguished guests this evening. As superintendent, I'm delighted to have the opportunity to hold such an important conversation with so many important stakeholders on such a critical topic. I know many of you in the audience, like I myself, have questions about this very important piece of legislative proposal. As you no doubt already see, we have a Bethel way of doing things here, and as I reminded our entire staff, who many, like myself, when first reading the governor's proposal, had emotional reactions to some of the proposals, we are here tonight to listen, to reason, and to have honest and open discourse, as is the tradition of this fine democracy. I would ask you to please quiet your cell phones, and please represent yourselves with the utmost dignity and respect, as you all deserve. To begin our conversation this evening, I'd like to introduce our first selectman, the Honorable Matthew Knickerbocker.
Thank you, Dr. Smith. Good evening, everyone. I'm delighted to see such a full house. I haven't seen this room packed like this since we had the last musical. So that was a darn good presentation, too. I want to recognize a few people. I want to recognize our school system, Dr. Smith, Dr. Jordan, and all the work they've done on our school district in putting this great event together. Our Naval ROTC unit has done a great job. This is one of the top 10% units in the nation, I'm proud to say. They do a wonderful just to give you a couple of pointers on how the evening is going to work. I think we probably have some people who've been to a few more of these presentations by our governor, but I have to tell you, I have the fantastic amount of respect for our governor and lieutenant governor. They are both fearless. The governor, as you remember from last year, went town to town to explain his budget. He likes to meet people, he likes to make presentations, he likes to hear from you. So the format we're going to employ this evening is, I'm sure you noted when you came in, several people filled out a little slip of paper, put your name in a bag, in a basket, and 10 names will be drawn, have been drawn, I have the names right here. And these will be the people who will be able to come to the microphone and ask questions. So I'm going to read those names right now, and what I'd ask is, if your name is read, please take a seat. You'll see that along the center row here, we have seats reserved for you so you can get up and get right to the microphone very easily. So I'll read those names now. First is Susan McGinnis.
Hi, I have 3 kids, so is this close enough for me?
Are you Susan McGinnis?
Yes, but
Yes.
just so somebody else can.
Okay.
Well, I'll go there, but you girls stay.
Well, you can. Well, actually, you're sitting right there. You can stay there.
Good, thanks.
No problem. Heather Green. If you just make your way over toward the microphone. James Modison. If I hope I'm not mangling anybody's name. Is that you, James? Yes. Deborah Stentz.
I'm declining.
What's that?
I'm declining.
You're declining. Okay. Karen Marcus. Eileen Costello. Jean Marie Montesano. Mark Reinders. Janice Jordan. You can sit there. And Mike D'Agostino. You make your way over to the microphone, and we're just about ready to begin. Lieutenant Governor is here. It is my great pleasure to introduce to you someone who is well known in the town of Bethel, a great friend of Bethel, a woman who began her career in politics like so many of us on the Board of Education, and served our state very well as state comptroller. I'm pleased to present Nancy Weiner.
Great to be here, and thank you so much for coming out tonight. On behalf of the governor and myself, we really, really do want to thank you for coming out. It's a very, very important evening for all of us. I want to, of course, thank your principal, Pat. She kind of sounds like me. I found out she comes from Queens and I come from Brooklyn. So did the nanny, for those of you that are old enough to remember. came from Queens, and she made a lot more money than I do. So, and of course, Superintendent Kevin Smith, thank you very, very much for having us tonight. We really do appreciate it. You know, and I'd like to just take a moment and really give a round of applause to your students here in Bethel. The singer was absolutely superb. You don't find that in many places, I want to tell you. And I was greeted by all of these young men and women in uniform, and how impressive they really are. And you know, you don't see that often, and they were very, very gracious to me. They smiled and shook my hand, and they talked about what they're going to do for the future, which is a future for them, and that, I thank you for that. Today I'm going to just introduce the legislators have chosen not to speak tonight. And I think they're saving it for the whole of the House and the Senate. And I appreciate that from the House, from the Senate side, because I do become the president of the Senate in my other role, and it really has been a pleasure, even though I came from the House of Representatives. It is a pleasure to be here. First of all, let me introduce and recognize that who's here tonight, Senator John McKinney, the Minority Leader of the Senate. Stand up, John. You got a great time. Senator McLaughlin has joined us. Senator Boucher has to stand up. There we go. Tony and I have a vertical challenge problem. We do. And Representative Chris Liddy is here tonight. And Representative Dan Carter. I just wanted to thank you and thank them for coming out tonight, and I just kind of want to talk about tonight. In a moment, you know, as you heard, that the names were called, and if we can get through those names, we will go on to the second list of names to come up and talk to the governor. The governor will start out by a short presentation to all of you, and we will automatically go into the questions and answers. I will stand up there. I'll play the old Vanna White, standing out and talking to you. I will tell you a very quick story. You know, the governor and I've done this before. We've gone out on the town budgets and town-wide budget and stuff, and we were one night somebody was very, very nervous about speaking to the governor. She was a woman, and she was very nervous when she came up to the microphone. The governor was answering the last question, and so I kind of rubbed her back and said, don't worry about it. It's okay. Please, just don't worry about it. Speak to the governor. It's really important for the governor to hear what your feelings are. She said, I don't know if I can do this. I said, no, you can do it. And I rubbed her back a little bit more. When the time came for her to ask the question, she nailed us. She really nailed it to us. So when you go up to the microphone, I will not be rubbing your back. We do know that there's a lot of teachers here tonight, and first of all, I want you to know that we're glad that you're here tonight, and we really want to hear from you. And we know that people are upset or concerned about the tenure in that bill, this bill. If you want to mention that, that's fine. But we really need to know what the rest of the bill is and how it affects you in the classroom, the children in the classroom, and the future of education. And so I know that there's one page in that 163 pages or whatever it is that you're not happy with. You can say that, but we really need you to give to us some other input also. So if you could, at the same time, because we want to have a lot of people in talking, if you could do it in a minute to a minute and a half of talking and asking a question, we would really appreciate it, so that we can get more people to have some time to get into this. It's really important to the governor and I to hear what people are saying. And so we really do ask it. If you don't get a chance to ask a question tonight, I'd like to give you the email address of the governor. Not mine, just the governor's. No, it is governor.malloy@ct.gov. And I'll repeat it, it's governor.malloy@ct.gov. And I promise you, you will get a reply. Because I know we're not going to get everybody in to be asking the questions or making any comments. Please do make those comments and please get back to us because it is very, very interesting to us. The governor is about 3 minutes out. So anybody want to tell any story? No, I'm just kidding.
We're in Brooklyn.
Brooklyn, New York, in Flatbush.
16
Flatbush. And we have a board member. Which board member was it? Stewart, there you are. We have a Board of Education member that's from Brooklyn, New York, too. We're the only people that...
Types of people in this world.
What are they?
Who are from Brooklyn and those who wish they were.
Brooklyn Avenue.
All right, you go. Well, you're the one with the little one. Don't get up till you're ready to speak.
I could do it from here.
What? I didn't hear you. St. Patrick, St. Joseph's? Right, no, that area in Brooklyn. I've been out of Brooklyn so long, but I'm the only one that can't lose the accent. Though I did meet Pat, and she has it very, and she's not losing it either, wherever Pat is tonight. Come on in. Please find a seat if you can. There aren't too many available, but there are some up there. I got to tell you, though, that as we go around the state, listening and talking to people, I am so proud of the state that I'm in because the people in this state are absolutely wonderful. They really are. You come out and you talk about things. I really have to tell you that this is not going to be a musical tonight. You would not want the governor singing. I know you were out here for the first selectman said that we could, last time you were all out, this place was filled was for a musical. This will not be it. Whatever we're doing here tonight, and whatever, for the governor and I believe everybody in this audience, the reason we're here is for kids. They are our future. That's what we're all here for. I'm very fortunate. I have 4 grandchildren that live in the state. And they go to school in the state, and we love the state, even though I have that funny accent. But you have to understand that the governor and I truly believe in education, to educate all our children, making sure that all our children have the best possible education it's possible for us to do today. So, I know that this is not working out very much, and the governor's driving slowly because he has to stay within the legal laws of the... Am I right? Master Sergeant? Thank you. Let me, I am going to ask a question, and the governor probably asked it anyway. Can you tell me how many teachers are here tonight?
Oh, yeah.
How many parents are here tonight? And how many students are here tonight? That's my favorite question to ask, because the amount of people that have, I just saw one gentleman that has color in my hair, and then some other people around here that are younger than I am, but older than, let's say, high school students, are here also because when you look around, we always find that there are students that are adults. And that when we ask the question, we always find people that are adults, and it's not just younger, mature students that we have in the audience here tonight. So, I'm going to now turn this over to our first selectman, who is now going to introduce the governor of the state of Connecticut.
Well, actually, Lieutenant Governor Wyman is kind of a tough speaker to follow. But it gives me great pleasure and great honor to introduce to you the 88th Governor of the state of Connecticut, Daniel P. Malloy. Please give him a warm welcome.
come to Bethel for a number of reasons, not the least of which is I'm doing a series of these meetings around the state. But Bethel is an extraordinary place and has been and needs to be recognized for all of the great work it has done in closing the achievement gap. About closing the achievement gap in Connecticut, you have to make a stop here and applaud the hard work of a series of superintendents and administrators and teachers and parents and a community that has embraced this issue to make sure that we raise up a generation in this community properly prepared for its educational mission, its work mission. I also want to congratulate the level of cooperation between this Board of Education and its local university on spearheading an educational plan that made sure that the quality of students graduating from Bethel met the standards and that the teachers and aspiring teachers from that university met the standards as well, and they're to be congratulated for that. Listen, we need to have a discussion in this state. And that's part of what we're doing, talking about the fact that we have had and continue to have the largest achievement gap in the nation. Now, we can all say that people born in poverty are going to have a harder time learning, but poverty is ubiquitous in this nation. We can all say that there are demographics that perhaps indicate that we should have the largest gap. But when you compare our demographics, for instance, to Maryland or New Jersey or Rhode Island or Massachusetts, they're darn close to identical. So we need to look at ourselves in the mirror and say, what more can we do to make sure that we raise up a generation that has learned and is ready for life's work? This particularly comes home to mind when you consider what happened in the most recent testing on a national basis, where those states that I just mentioned increased fourth grade scores, and we actually had declining fourth grade scores. And everybody in this room has heard what happens in many parts of this country when it comes to predicting a prison population. Companies that are hired to do that frequently in a state, in a locale, in a county, look at the number of children failing to read at or near third grade level at the end of third grade. So this discussion needs to be had about everything that needs to be on the table. Now listen, I understand that 163 pages, what we are proposing is difficult and shakes up the status quo. But as much as I celebrate being in Bethel and all of its accomplishments, imagine if you were forced to raise your children in a community that hadn't taken on this mission, that wasn't closing the achievement gap, but rather was tolerating it and not doing anything to change it. So what this discussion is about is all of the things in this package. From making sure that at a minimum 500 additional early childhood learning spots are available at the start of the next school year, that we concentrate our efforts on 30 low-performing districts that educate 41% of our student body in the state and employ 37% of our teachers, that we further focus on the 25 lowest-performing schools in this state and work with everyone we can work with on a statewide basis to turn around those 25 lowest performing schools. That we make sure that the $5 billion in this budget for the first time in the state's history, where the state will contribute to ongoing training of teachers, gets spent wisely. We make sure that the $50 million that will go through the ECS formula, 70,000 of it coming to this community, 39.5 million of it going to the 30 lowest performing districts, is spent in such a way that it is not used to displace local spending, but is actually applied toward improving education and accomplishment and the acquisition of early literacy skills. There is so much in this agenda. I understand it's difficult. I also understand it's difficult for other reasons, because it changes the status quo in the relationship that has for a long time existed in our state. And here we'll undoubtedly talk about some of that. But let me say what we actually do in this proposal is that which has been proposed over the last 2 years, that which was represented in a vote by a commission established by the legislature that met for 2 years and came to an evaluation process both for teachers and principals, and does exactly what the CEA called for on their own website, and that website up in existence this very day when I last checked it. And that is to take into statute that very evaluation process. So I understand that this is hard, but I put it in the context of how hard a life will be of a young person who misses the opportunity to be raised in a community or a state that has taken the closure of the achievement gap as seriously as the community that we celebrate today. With that, Lieutenant Governor, are you ready?
I'm absolutely ready.
I'm ready too.
Okay, Susan McGinnis. You want to take the baby? Why is I learned to everything?
Can you hear me?
I can. Hello.
Happy early St. Patty's Day and Isaac Munch. This is Seamus. He's disabled. He has life-threatening food allergies. We have asthma. I have the way for you to save money and help teachers gain control in the classroom. My battery died, so my notes, I gotta go freestyle. I'm fighting the Newtown District for 2.5 years. I'm the big mouth over there. Chris knows me, I love him. We had a Democrat and a Republican representatives come together to help the kids because they brought the attention that we need in special ed. Pardon me, he's getting heavy. And what's going on, I found out, is allegedly corruption, sadly, in the State Department of Ed, and I have evidence, I'm bringing it. I got 1% of the Newtown electorate, and I'm finally getting my paperwork together without babysitters. So please come to the hearing in Newtown, listen to what's going on in the State Department of Ed, in the Legal Affairs and Special Ed Division. There are hearings on one side, hearings on another, and 504 disability in the middle. And mine passed, and I found out the corruption with, allegedly, my new word this year I learned, the alleged corruption with lawyers and hearing officers, and you're seeing it a lot nowadays. The hearing officers are shills and shell games. So what happens is the staff, teachers, have to be yes men and women to administrators who might not be doing the best thing for the taxpayers, the children, and all of us. And the yes men and women, their mortgages are on the line. It happened in my 2 cases. I asked for a bus to stop as it passed my house, and the superintendent said no. Present company accepted, and the superintendent, but this is Newtown, not Bethel. So if you want to save taxpayer money and give teachers what they need in the classroom, which is the capability to say yes or no to their administrators, who are in cahoots, I allege, with big law firms. And I went to the Attorney General, and he didn't give me a response. I found out he's from the same law firm. There's no question I'm Irish, we just talk. You know, you're...
No, let me just share something.
Okay.
I've worked in the area of students with disabilities, learning disabilities, learning differences, all of my professional life. And I've sat through any number of personal hearings and processes and represented on a pro bono basis a school that specialized. So I certainly understand the angst. And so what I'm going to ask is that Chris, I'm sure Chris has information, you can get your information to Chris, you get it to him, I promise you I will review it.
I appreciate it, and happy St. Patty's Day. Good luck to all the union and non-union people, and etc.
Heather Green.
Hi, my name is Heather Green, and I'm a parent, and I'm not from Bethel, although it's a great community, and I would love to be here with my kids. So I am coming as a parent, and I know that this bill is pretty much holding the teachers accountable, but I'm concerned about administrators, parents and even students being held accountable, because there are parents who don't. There are parents I've seen go into the schools swearing at the teachers in front of their students. I don't think that's acceptable. And there's students that hinder the learning of other children in the classroom. Fights break out. There was a fight at my daughter's school just the other day, and they had to take all the kids out of the classroom because 2 girls started flipping desks. And one of the guidance counselors got punched in the face. I mean, that's unacceptable.
Sure
If
is.
you can't be, in that classroom contributing, then something needs to be done. So everyone needs to be held accountable, not just teachers. So I just want to know what will be done on that part. Like, can you do something with parents and students and administrators as well?
Yeah, yes, I think we can. And I think that the last session and this session, there have been laws, in some cases passed, in some cases continuing to be discussed, about protecting teachers in classrooms and holding school systems and administrators to a higher standard, and making sure that not just students are protected, but faculty members are protected. We've undertaken that. It's not in this bill, but it is in other bills, and I know that committees have taken that up. I don't know what the status of the most recent bill that has been proposed with respect to teacher protection, but if you send me an email, I'll get you an answer on that.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I'd just like to start by saying, I'd like to say hello to Governor Moynihan and Lieutenant Governor. My name is James Montesano, and I live in Easton, Connecticut. And I'm also currently a senior at AITE, the Academy of Information Technology and Engineering in Danbury. And now, the option to go to AITE, rather than my district high school, which is Owarla, has been life-changing. It has let me have so many opportunities, and to the point where I even wrote my college essay on that. And since magnet schools have been proven to be successful, why is there a moratorium on magnet schools, which are known to reduce racial isolation in the state of Connecticut, and have been proven a proven track record for students' success, unlike charter schools? I haven't seen that in charter schools yet, so I was just curious why the moratorium was in place.
Sure. Well, first of all, as you know, I was one of the people who started AITE in Stanford, you're raising an important point. There are models that we know work, and for whatever reason, we don't frequently replicate those models. Now, you're going from your community at great distance to go to a high school in Stanford. That when it started with about a class of 30 people, no one thought would be successful. And the Board of Education twice tried to kill it, if you've studied the history of AITE.
Yes.
Okay. What we are actually saying in this legislation is it's those successful models that we actually have to get out of the box and replicate. And in point of fact, replicate those, in some cases, on a state-funded basis, which we're willing to do, for instance. And in other cases, simply have districts choose different models to run schools, those models which have proven themselves successful. Listen, you can go to New Haven and Stanford, and Bridgeport and Hartford, and most of the 30 communities, and find an outstanding school that usually is run on a different model than the other. Intra-district, inter-district, local magnet schools, state magnet schools, charter schools, VOTEC schools, all of those things. But the vast majority of our students don't attend those different models. They go to the same model that year after year has allowed us for 13 years to have the largest achievement gap in the country. So with respect to the specifics of the state funding that you may be referencing, I'm going to have to check on that. But I'm telling you that there are models here that if they're chosen by a local district, we're actually willing to kick in $3,000 additional per head enrolled in that school. We're trying to encourage districts to go in the direction in this legislation of choosing successful models. So I haven't spoken at a graduation at AIT in actually only 1 year. I haven't spoken, now that I think about it. And as I remember, AITE, a school in an urban district, had 100% placement in college or in the military, with I think 2 kids who decided to go into the military the last graduation I spoke. Yes, sir. Now, thank you very much for raising the question. If you send me an email, I'll get you more information on any such moratorium. Thank you. Thank you.
Karen Marcus.
Good evening.
I'm a parent. I have 4 children who have all, one who's already graduated from public schools, and 3 other are getting now, slow down his kindergarten. And I'm involved tonight. I came, usually I don't get involved in these kind of things, but I'm upset with your bill.
Sure.
And there are many things that I'm not going to go into that I find ridiculous. But my biggest problem with the bill is the fact that you are politicizing education instead of being concerned about my child's education. I'm tired of the testing. I'm tired of my kids' teachers' hands being tied to be able to be creative in the classroom. I want my kids to have opportunities that I see offered locally to kids in other countries, countries that are outperforming us, who don't dictate their curriculum to a test. Our administrators to stand up and say enough is enough, as some communities have done in this country. So adding more testing and tying our teachers' hands even more, and then making them almost powerless to teach beyond that test, does our kids such a disservice and puts us even further behind globally.
Sure, go ahead.
And in creating your plan, I don't hear or see any teacher input, any parent. You gotta take us into consideration. I mean, we're smart people too. You guys get decided up in Hartford, but it affects us differently. So I want the parents and the teachers to have a say in this bill.
Let me respond to all of that. It's a 163-page bill. And quite frankly, it doesn't do what you're saying it does. In point of fact, with respect to evaluation, all it does is implement an evaluation system for both teachers and principals that came about as a result of a 2-year-long process that both unions representing teachers in our state fully participated in and voted for. It is true. But listen, I don't...
Having one person, one union representative on behalf of teachers at the table compared to having other big businesses right there in
Listen, I listen to you, so let me respond. So you're repeating things that other people have said. So let me point out who the two union representatives. Let me point out who the two union representatives were. They were the presidents of both of the unions. And by the way, understand that in that process, there were 2 years of meetings, of conferences, where lots of people's input was taken. And in point of fact, on the very CEA website today, it talks about putting into statute that agreement. So honestly, I think you mean absolutely everything you said. But let's look at our evaluations. By the way, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, and more recently New York have all adopted those evaluation systems. And in point of fact, Massachusetts has been at education reform for 10 years.
Doesn't make it right.
And, well, let me finish. And in point of fact, let me go back to the evaluation. The evaluation, in our case, is less dependent on test scores than most other states that have adopted them. And you may not be...
I'm not even asking about the
So then let me answer another point.
about the testing.
Yeah, sure. And by the way, we're not expanding testing. What we're doing here is saying that testing is a factor to be taken into consideration in an evaluation, but only at 22.5% of the evaluation. That's the reality. And by the way, let's be very clear what we then say and do. We are taking that system and making it part of a system of evaluating teachers. There are lots of other points of input in that evaluation process. Now let me answer another thing that you said. Since you had children in this town, in this school system did not close the achievement gap by lowering other people's test scores. In point of fact, what it did was raise people's test scores. And by the way, almost every kid who goes to college in this country has to take a test. It's called the SATs or the ACTs. We admit to ourselves when our children are competing for placement that a test is okay. And by the way, I'm a guy who probably, because of my learning disability, probably, and in point of fact, didn't do particularly well on those tests. I understand that. And I understand what an over-reliance could be. But in point of fact, what I'm trying to tell you is that over-reliance is not represented in the state evaluation system that's been approved.
If it's 45%.
It isn't.
Not every subject is tested.
Thank you.
Hello, Governor.
Hello.
I'm going to be talking about early childhood education. I'm the school readiness coordinator for the city of Danbury. And we have 345 children in 24 classrooms who operate in Danbury, including some here in Bethel and New Fairfield. And they are great programs. And I want to thank you for your support of early childhood. So the problems that we're running into is the teacher qualifications are being raised with 2015, 17, and 2020 being the new benchmarks for us. We don't have any programs in this area of the state that do teacher preparation for early childhood. So it really, if you build it, they will come. If you educate them, we'll hire them, but we have no place to educate the staff in this area of the state. So I'm requesting that you require all state universities to offer early childhood education.
Listen, those requirements, as you know, came about before I became governor. And I'd be more than happy, and know that I'm pretty big on early childhood education, going back 12 years ago, 13 years ago, when Stanford moved in that direction on a citywide basis. So I'd be happy to work with you on that issue. As you know, some of the universities do. Many of the community colleges are also getting into the training in early childhood and preparatory to other degrees being obtained. I spent some time last week at Norwalk specifically seeing their early childhood preparation program. So if you reach out to me, we can have that conversation.
Another part of my thing is, Danbury just finished a 2-year data project, and I know that you're always saying there's not very good information on early childhood, most of it anecdotal, et cetera, but we did finish a 2-year study on our school readiness children, and 83% of them were at goal or above on all the assessments.
Yeah.
Were English language learners and low income, but now I need to do a plug for Dr. Sal. We do a great job getting them ready, but we need to sustain the results of closing that achievement gap by offering full-day kindergarten.
Early childhood education is the biggest bang for the educational part. So we got to work on universal access. Which is a way of saying that no child in Connecticut should ever miss the opportunity for a quality pre-kindergarten learning experience because of their parents' financial condition.
And the next speaker is Jean Marie Mendesano.
Good evening, Governor.
Good evening.
My name is Jean Marie Montesano, and I'm from Easton, and I'm the proud parent of that fine young man who spoke. And as he said, he's a senior at the Academy of Information and Technology and Engineering, a school you helped create. And we are so thankful that there's increases in the funding for the magnet schools. When you come from a district that has a high-performing school like Joe Barlow, people look at you like, why would you send your kid anywhere else? And as Jay said, it's been truly life-changing. He would have slipped through the cracks. Even though it's a high-performing school, there's an achievement gap. It's not great numbers, but there's people that are still, really losing it, and I've seen children whose spirits have been broken. They need options. We need options in our state, and this magnet school was our salvation, truly. So, obviously magnet schools are my thing, because I'm my son. I've been told that according to Ken Imparato from the Department of Education, a 10-year plan with recommendations for magnet schools was requested by the previous Commissioner of Education, and that it's either not been available to the current Education Committee or not to the public. And I just can't speak enough. I wish more people could learn what I learned on the front line right there. If some of that information's in a report, I think every school can learn from what's been going on there. I think people like Joe Barlow, this high-performing school, can take a few lessons from some of the things that have gone on in that school that people learn fantastically.
Okay.
So anyway, I'd like to know how much of that information can really get around, if it's going to be getting around, because, and I also just wanted to add that we've heard that the federal level isn't quite as supportive of the magnet schools as much as charter, and will our government sort of be pushing upward for magnets?
Okay. So, we are moving forward with magnets. In fact, I know that I've got to sign in the not too distant future some bonding documents. So I really have to do a little more work on that issue and get back to you and your son on it. So they are not totally stopped, but you know, if you or your son get me some information, I'll get somebody to get you some additional information. Any report that the State Board of Education, I was looking to see if the commissioner or one of his assistants was here, in my opinion, should be made available. It's a public document and should be readily available if it's been finalized. And I assume that that's what you're talking about, not a Stanford document, but a safe document. So again, if you can get me something that describes what that report is, I'll set about getting you a copy of it.
And please know, if you need any supporters, you know where to call. We'll be right behind you.
Let me just raise one thing and use, I haven't used this term in a while, really since I was mayor. But what I argued for in Stanford, and we had some success in bringing about, was a full menu of opportunities for parents and children of all ages to choose between. So much so that there had to be lotteries, as you know, to decide how many people could go to any one of those. And that included the international school at Rogers. It included Westover and Toquon district magnet schools, as well as Rogers, which is now an inter-district, as well as the creation of AITE, as well as some other schools, including a freshman campus at one of our high schools, to not totally isolate, but to give around some more wraparound services to freshmen in that transition year. We need to break outside the box.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I'm going to call up Mark Reinders to come up, but while I do, Representative Gail Bell is here too. I'm sorry, Gail. I mess up your name every time. I apologize.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm a career changer. At the age of 45, I became a teacher in 4th grade. I was a contractor, and I would have the crew hose me down behind someone's garage, and I'd go to get my master's degree. I'm in my 15th year, I'm 60, I have 5 years to go. Like all my colleagues here, at 5:30 on Saturday and Sunday morning, I'm parked at my kitchen table, working for 3 hours. Anyone who's married to a teacher knows what we're talking about. When I see this legislation, I'm left feeling like for some unfathomable reason, I and my colleagues are responsible for the achievement gap. A lot of research showing a direct link between the income gap rather than the teacher performance gap. Are you a sports fan? Are we having fun tonight, Governor? The analogy that I would use is, you got a baseball team from an affluent town. They can afford the best equipment, the best practice time, the best training. Their conditions at home are solid, supportive. Anything they want, they got. You go to a poorer district, poorer baseballs, poorer mitts, poorer balls, not enough practice time. Don't show up for practice because their parents are too busy working 2 and 3 jobs, etc., etc. They don't stand a chance. You could bring in a major league superstar coach, and all you would get is a team with no baseballs, no uniforms, none of the equipment they need, none of the support. It's part of a grown-up conversation. My question is, in what way are the teachers truly expected to compensate in those districts where there's just not enough money? What did we do to cause this problem?
You know, let me start by thanking you for your choice in a second career.
I didn't have a choice, it was meant to be.
Thank things you've said. No one is saying, and no one has ever said, that teachers can do it alone. And quite frankly, no one should ever say that a poor kid in any one of our cities currently can't overcome the difficulties that they experience. It does happen. For instance, in the Hartford school system, 17% of 10th graders do in fact read at goal. 17%. In many of our urban areas, we are effectively failing 40 to 60% of the students. So you've asked what's in this package to turn that around. 500 seats by September of new early childhood education seats. $5 million for the first time in the state's history to get into the business of helping to train on a local district basis teachers. There's money on a competitive grant basis. And with respect, of $4.5 million to get out of the box and try other things. Of the $50 million of the $123 million package, $50 million goes according to the ECS formula, which has been effective to make sure that $39.5 million of that $50 million flow to the very districts that you're describing. There is so much in this package that the debate about whether we should implement an evaluation system that 23 other states have already done, and 32 states have changed the evaluation process since 2009, has overshadowed so much of what you're talking about and what drove you into education. Whoever is telling you that this is about blaming teachers isn't telling you the truth.
We can read.
And then I invite you to read it in its entirety. And I invite you to read the websites of your own unions that talk in both cases about the need for an evaluation process and about the need to change tenure as we know it. Literally a quote. So let's even talk about tenure for a moment, if I might use your dime to do it.
We didn't bring it up.
In the package that both the CEA and the AFT both proposed to the legislature last spring and bitterly complained that it wasn't passed, have most of the same things that this package is saying about tenure. What we need to do is have a discussion where we're not blaming children and we're not blaming teachers, but we understand and recognize that failing 40 to 60% of children in an urban environment and having a state that is failing so many of its people that we're no longer competitive for job creation has got to end. And by the way, there are examples of states that are doing it. Massachusetts, which used to be behind us in all kinds of review, including percentage of kids getting high school degrees and including percentage of kids who get college degrees, is now ahead of us. Why? Because they got on this road a long time ago. And they were brave enough to travel. And then sometimes I hear, you didn't say it, teachers say, well, you're going to drive people out of the profession. Let me assure you, we didn't have people rushing over our borders from Massachusetts or Rhode Island or New York or any of the other states that have made this connection. And by the way, let me say one final thing. You deserve to have in the building in which you work people who work just as hard as you do. And it may, in fact, occur in your building. But frequently when I have a discussion with a teacher about this, and by the way, two of my sister-in-laws well, one still teaches, one just retired after 38 years last year in the Stanford school system. And two of my brothers were long-term teachers as well. In fact, let me be very clear, my dad got an 8th grade education. He didn't have the opportunity that hard work allowed him to give to his children, but he made sure that they understood, just as we hope every parent has the capability of making their children understand that they need to work hard. But I understand that not every child understands that. But then that gets us into this point. If we keep doing what we've done, and we know it is not successful, then don't be surprised that we fail to turn around the results.
I think everybody agrees that there are certain changes necessary. I think what concerns everybody is the degree of overkill. If I hit my toe with a hammer, please don't cut off my leg to fix it.
And nobody whoever is telling you that that's what's in this package is not telling you the truth.
So with all due respect, I'm looking at how I'm going to be evaluated, how I'm going to be certified. I'm 5 years from retirement. I'm living in semi-terror of the implications of this, the unknowns, and I don't deserve it.
To have this discussion. You're a good teacher, aren't you?
I think so.
Okay. And your peers agree. So let me actually have a conversation with you, about what this commission has already decided. Okay? That 45% of a teacher's evaluation will be based on multiple student learning measures. 5% on whole school learning. 40% on observations of teachers' performance. And 10% on peer and parent feedback surveys. By the way, at the numbers there, and I think one thing that people keep talking about is the percentage that is tied to tests is lower in our state than just about in most other states. That's a reality. And if someone's not telling you that...
Oh, no, I understand.
Okay, fine.
No, I don't think we've been misled about that, sorry.
Okay.
But I do believe that 20% that is governed by test scores, that's my point about the inequitable funding, because it does drive differences in student achievement. If I am going to rely, even in part, on parental or student feedback, teachers are going to dumb me up. They're going to be terrified to say what they professionally feel.
What district do you teach in?
Ridgefield.
So you're not talking about a district that is underfunded, are you?
No, that's my point.
Right. So
I'm very lucky. I mean, I work with the most phenomenal people. I think that people who teach in the tougher areas are next to sainthood. And if not for them,
but listen, you're making your points and you're allowing me to try to learn some things. So you think 22% is too high?
Yes.
So what percentage is the right percentage?
I think the way it's set up right now has been working really well for a long time because we're not the reason that there's a problem. There are problems, but we're not the number one reason.
Okay.
I want to,
Thank you very much.
I'm hogging it. And
It's all right.
I appreciate you taking the time.
I heard you. You said zero.
Dr. Jordan.
Thank you, Governor Maloney, for coming tonight to Bethel. My name is Janice Jordan. I'm the Associate Superintendent of Schools. And I wanted to talk to you about a couple of things that have been on my mind. I've studied Senate Bill 24 a lot, and there's a part to it that I need to speak to you about and ask you about, because I have such pride in Bethel, but I have especially such pride in Bethel's teachers, and that I believe that this is a truly exemplary school system, and that it has a teacher evaluation program that was built by teachers that has included student learning data for many years. And teachers are very accountable for that data. They write about it, they reflect on it, they're continuously improving. And although I cannot make a direct causal relationship, I can tell you that when we implemented it, that's when Bethel's scores began to really climb, because of all the work by the staff. And what is hurting me and worrying me a great deal is that our teachers are concerned about some of the peak recommendations, and they're concerned especially about having their good work and the work of their principals reduced to an algorithm and a ranking. And I really implore you and ask you, how do you plan to preserve school systems that have worked very hard to close achievement gaps with excellent evaluation systems, and do not mind being held accountable? Teachers, in my opinion, seek that out. Professional people have wanted to be accountable forever, and they're not afraid of data. They use it all the time to plan for instruction. How can we, first of all, preserve their dignity and their feelings? Because right now, I don't like the contentious feeling in this room. I don't think people are hearing you. I don't think they understand the bill that well. And those who have really studied it, I think they're not even willing to give you a chance to talk about it. And what I'm saying is, you please do something and somehow convey to the state of Connecticut and to its teachers that you really respect them, that you believe that there is room for differentiated teacher evaluation, that I don't want to have a ranking system. I don't believe in it. It's antithetical to what I believe in as a teacher myself and as an administrator for 22 years. So I implore you to do that. And I'd really like you to just respond to them. I'm sorry I don't have a more lucid question.
It's okay. It's okay. Listen, I began by saying that some wonderful things have been done here. As you know, from your history in education, and I began by recognizing this community as an exception, quite frankly. I would love for you to share with me, when you have time, what your process is, because you said, just let me be very clear, because you said you take data into consideration. So I assume, what does data mean? Just quickly.
It means not only student test scores, and I'm not speaking just about the CAPTAIN and CMT, but on benchmark district assessments and teachers' common formative assessments throughout the year, and using those in data teams, but also actual student work. Looking at work that kids do and saying, how can we make it better? What can we do? What do we need to focus on? That's what we need to do.
And so can I just say something to you?
Yes.
I think that that's all in this assessment system. I've read it, and I've spent time with the folks who worked on it. Now, you may resent a percentage assignment to any of those things, but everything you just said, can and will be included in this process. And let me be very clear, multiple student learning measures.
Yes,
you do that. Whole school learning, I suspect you do that. But by the way, it's 5% in this. Observation of teacher performance, I suspect you do that.
Very much so.
And that's 40%. And I don't know whether you do peer or parent feedback surveys, but let me tell you a story about a conversation I had with a national head of a unit, who we invited to come because people have said we haven't talked to a lot of teachers. Happens not to be true, by the way. We've talked to lots of teachers, including having conferences and discussions, including having representatives of the teaching profession in my office on a fairly regular basis. But this was a conversation I had with one of the national heads of a teaching union. And I posited for the purpose of discussion that if you actually asked all the teachers in a school building to rate every teacher in the school building, you'd probably have a 90% correspondence about who the best teachers were, who the middle teachers were, and who the teachers who need work to be better. And I think what you've done is found a way, presumably, to find that out. And I think what this panel did was to try to build a system that also does that. And you may disagree with the assignment of percentages, but you don't disagree with the goal. You don't disagree that all of the things that have been mentioned should be in that. And so let me finish by saying we continue to have those discussions. Watching legislation made, as has been frequently said, is one of the two things you shouldn't watch. The other is sausage being made. And for a summer job in high school, I made sausage. I never served in the legislature, but there is certain similarity. That process continues. But to have this conversation where people are actually refusing to hear, because I heard what you said, and I think you understand I heard what you said.
Well, may I say something else?
Sure.
I just wanted to tell you that I know that you heard what I said to a certain degree, but the piece that is truly, I think, offensive is the ranking of teachers and the reduction of people to an algorithm when the profession is enormously complex. And
I don't believe it does that.
She's an expert in education, sir.
I don't believe it reduces anything to an algorithm, with all due respect. But I'm happy to have you send me the language that you think actually reduces it to an algorithm.
I promise you I'll do that. Thank you.
I currently live in Reading now, and I'm on the Reading Board of Education. And I wanted to applaud you for your attempt to introduce measures aimed at reducing the achievement gap. I think we can all agree that improving the educational experience for all students is of paramount concern. However, there's many ways to go about doing this. Increasing educational funding for priority districts is the obvious first step. However, I do feel it's important to continue to support all school districts in order to continue to raise the bar in education. Currently, my hometown of Reading receives about 7 cents on every dollar that we send to Hartford, and Bethel receives about 32 cents of every dollar that they send. And so my question to you is, do you feel that this bill, or this legislation, does enough for all districts in an effort to keep improving all school systems? And my second follow-up is that in order to encourage consolidation, part of the legislature also proposes some severe penalties aimed at forcing smaller districts to consolidate. Reading is part of a tri-district with Easton, and we share a superintendent, we share central office costs. And I have been told that we would not be a district that would be penalized if this was to go forward. But I'm wondering what the thought rationale is and why you wouldn't try to encourage consolidation by, in a positive way, by maybe increasing cost sharing if you do consolidate, rather than taking the negative approach of trying to penalize districts that don't.
So let me start there. We actually do trying to encourage. In fact, we fund to the tune of $300,000 a year those discussions that take place. There is a problem in Connecticut outside of education and performance, and that is that property taxes are not going to increase at the rate that they did in the 70s, the 80s, and the 90s, and in the last decade before the downturn. We're not going to see that kind of growth. And so there is this emerging difficulty out there that a lot of communities are going to have to wrestle with. And that is how to continue to meet their educational mission when property taxes are not likely to grow unless you continually raise property taxes. And we all know that we live in an environment where people don't want to do that. So what we're trying to do is encourage that discussion and to pay for it. And that's in the bill, $300,000. And by the way, you know, your district, I don't know whether you will have 1,000 students or not. Maybe 1,000 is the wrong number. But I know districts of 84 students are pretty small. And we know that there are small districts that actually replicate just about every function. HR functions, superintendents and assistant superintendents in very small districts. So all that we're saying is let's have a discussion in our state about actually planning for what's coming at us. and that is a resistance to raising property taxes in this state. Now let me answer some of the other things that you mentioned. I bet you I went to school with some of your relatives, by the way, at Stanford. So let me address some of them. You asked about Bethel. Bethel's budget, school budget, at least last year, was less than $40 million. Over $8 million of that actually did come from state government in ECS and other funding mechanisms. Now, I don't know what the number is for Reading, and I apologize for not knowing. But we're playing a significant role in this school district. And as you know, I'm trying to increase the role we play in most districts at the same time that we're not allowing any district to lose money. So let me tell you about my road trips last year, town hall meetings, when I presented a plan that everybody was mad about because it raised revenue and it cut services and it did other things. But one of the things we did at that time, and everyone's now forgotten that, is we held harmless communities of $270 million cuts in the ECS formula that had been built into that budget. $270 million. And this year we add an additional $50 million to the ECS formula. And in that period of time, no one has lost money. And some people, you're right, will gain it. Now, $39.5 million of it will be shared by the 30 lowest performing districts that actually educate 41% of our students in the state. And the rest will be distributed to districts, some of which will come to Bethel. I don't remember whether Reading is one of them, that it gets it or not, but it doesn't lose any, I can assure you. I firmly believe that if we're serious, and this actually relates to the former contractor who's now a teacher, absolutely relates to what he said. If we don't concentrate some amount of money on closing that wealth gap, then we're not going to be able to close the achievement gap. And that's why we also spend money in certain other areas like early childhood education. So I get what you're saying.
I'm sorry that we need to close that gap. I guess the point that I'm trying to stress is in order for all the students to continue to achieve, we have to, give additional funding, I think, to all school districts rather than only the priority.
I think most of the school districts saw some increase. There are some that didn't. And if they didn't, it was because of the urgency of getting more money in the hands of districts with an agreement to how to spend that money that are failing 40 to 60% of their student body. Okay? Okay. Listen, I want to thank everybody for being here. I know I have not satiated everyone in the room, but what I'm attempting to do is make sure that our state is fully engaged in a process that 31 other states have undertaken already, including states that we directly border, and most particularly Rhode Island and Massachusetts that began this effort years ago and are showing results as a result of that effort. So I want to thank you for being here. It's great to be with you and great to have you.
Hello, I'm Officer Lance Brevard with the Danbury Police Department. Please remember during this holiday season to refrain from drinking and driving. Remember that your friends, families, and loved ones are out on the roadways, and we want you to have an enjoyable and safe holiday season.